Bodega Baseball alongside my primo hermano Luis. What's up, Luis? I'm Manny. Dímelo.
Hey, Manny, how's it going?
I'm good, man. A cup of coffee here. My camera stopped working, so I'm in a backup camera currently.
Nice.
Yeah, nothing else. You?
Nah, not much going on in baseball. It is back on TV. We're happy about that. I saw Fernando Tatis hit a grand slam yesterday, so proud for my boy.
Nice. Coming up in a few minutes, we're gonna run a quick little mini panel that Luis and I held last night with two super talented baseball writers, Zachary Hayes and Ben Clemens. Ben Clemens of FanGraphs, Zachary Hayes of Pitcher List, and he hosts a podcast under the Pitcher List Network too, about Trevor Bauer, whether or not he may or may not be cheating, and there's some evidence that says that maybe he cheated, even though he claims to be a moral person, he still might be using a grip aiding substance. But before we get to that, there's a couple of big stories. The first one that I see here is that the AAA season has been delayed by 1 month. And Luis, you may not have the answers for me here, but it makes me wonder if the AAA season's delayed by 1 month, what service time manipulation, like, does it impact it? Can they still hold these guys back? You know what I mean? Or are they doing more damage?
I don't know, because I don't really keep up with what's going on in the minors. I would imagine that it's business as usual when it comes to service manipulation for MLB clubs. I feel like, do they have to be playing on a minor league? Like, do they have to put in a certain amount of games in the minors before that starts to kick in, or is it just about like keeping them off of major league roster?
It's keeping them off of a big league roster until I think it's like 2 weeks into the season or something, which is insane, man. Like the union got fleeced with that. If they agreed to that, which they did, because they're
Yeah.
operating under this CBA, like that shouldn't, like, I would understand. I would understand having, like, I would understand if it was like, maybe like if you play 81 games or something, that counts for a season. But 2 weeks, I think it's 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but whatever. So anyway, the AAA season delayed by 1 month. The MLB season, they were trying to delay the MLB season by a month as well, but they ended up not doing that because the players declined that deal. So baseball will start on time, but AAA has been delayed. So if you have a minor league stadium near you, you won't see any games until a month later than you would have originally. The second story was the Mickey Callaway thing, man. This guy is creepster and a half. Apparently, he was doing stuff like this at a much worse rate when he was with the Cleveland Indians. And Terry Francona and a couple of higher ups over there knew about it and kept it under wraps, which is kind of effed up.
It is. I love Terry Francona. I just think he's an old school guy that likes to keep things within the clubhouse. So, do we know that he just helped Callaway out by, sweeping it under the rug, or did he just keep it under wraps in terms of like he didn't leak it out to the media, but things were still taken care of behind doors? Do you think Terry Francona did the right thing still, even though we didn't hear about it? I didn't really haven't read
From what I
into it.
understand, he was active in the covering up of it. Like, he called either like, it was a married woman Mickey Callaway had an affair with at one point, and Francona spoke with the husband of that woman. I think it was something like that. Like he made some sort of effort to make sure that this doesn't get out. And then people were getting on Nick Francona's case about it yesterday because he's very vocal on Twitter, and he put out a statement saying that he confronted his father about it, and his father lied to him and told him that he didn't know about it, when it turns out that he did. So it seems like, I don't know. I try to put myself in the situation of these guys. Like if one day I'm put in a situation where somebody I work alongside with, or if I at some point become some sort of boss in some company or something, and I find out that one of my employees did something like this, I would hope that I would handle it in a way that would make my mother, my sisters, my wife, my daughters proud. But I don't know, man, because where's the gray? I don't know. Like, did these
Always a
women
gray area.
consent? I don't know. I really don't know. There's no excuse for the behavior, and yeah, it's just I'm a loss for words, and it's too bad to see Terry Francona's name being dragged into this because I like him too. Um, but I don't know. I have no words essentially.
I say in Terry Francona's case, let's just let more of the story come out and see exactly what happened. I think he's declining to answer some of the questions right now.
Mm,
But yeah, I love Terry Francona, so I hate to see his name getting pulled into this as well.
yeah. Um,
Um,
yeah. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say with this conversation that we're about to come up with here in the podcast, something that people should start paying attention to, which I'm going to start paying attention to now when I see a pitcher get a certain like uptick in his game is an increase in RPMs. I think we got to all as fans start paying attention to pitchers who figure out a way to increase their RPMs on a pitch. Um and maybe this can be like the new miles per hour tracker like in baseball.
Yeah, they have the all the equipment set up in every stadium for Statcast, so they should be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna look for this season is if Trevor Bauer's RPMs increase even more, and by how much, and if it does, um, by how much is he outpacing the guy behind him? Because
Mhm.
the conclusion that I came to after this conversation, and I kind of went back and forth during this conversation.
Same.
Um, First, I was like, it's not that big of a deal, but because Bauer is such a big mouth, we're making it a big deal because it's almost like, oh, you're talking about morality, and yet you're doing it, so you're a hypocrite, right? But
Mhm.
then I flip flop to the other side and thought to myself, wait a minute, not he is doing this, and a lot of pitchers are doing this, but nobody's doing it the way he is. Like he's mastered this aid grip aiding substance, whatever he's putting on his wherever in his body is benefiting him, it seems, more than anybody else. And
Yeah.
that's where we start to get into territory where it's kind of fishy. You know what I mean? Um so I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts before we jump into it?
No, I think that we covered a lot in the next segment.
Yeah, so it's a pretty long interview, but I think it's interesting through and through. Anything you want to know about grip aiding substances, the numbers behind every, what we're going to be talking about, everything. Um, just check these two guys out, Ben Clemens and Zachary Hayes. And yeah, so let's jump right to it. All right, so let me just explain why we're doing this essentially. So Luis, my cousin Luis, who on my
That's me.
screen, he's
That's
above
me.
me. I don't know how you guys have yours
You're
set
to
up.
the you're to my left.
It's like the Brady Bunch, but anyway, so he introduced me to this video on
On baseball
YouTube,
doesn't
and
exist.
yeah, and I was just like blown away by a lot of it. Like a lot of it I knew, but not to the extent that this video broke down, and it referenced Ben Clemens's articles, and it from that I found Zach's piece, I found someone else's piece, um, and I'm just like almost baffled by this whole thing, and that it's not a bigger story, especially considering how baseball handles controversies. Like the steroid era in football, we know that guys are taking steroids. You know what I mean? Like, and nobody gives two shits. Excuse my language. In baseball, the steroid era came about, and it might be the reason why baseball was saved, but it could have also been the reason why it's lost so much popularity over the last 2 decades or so. Then you have a story like this, and you have Trevor Bauer saying that the sticky substances are worse than steroids. And it's almost like we know that it's going on. You guys found clear data that it's going on, but nobody's talking about it. You know what I mean? It stays in the Twitterverse. So we're trying to bring more light to this topic, have this be more of a conversation that's still on the top of people's minds. And I really enjoyed both your pieces, and that's why I invited you guys to come on to talk about it a little more, because we are the layman's fans, and a lot of the verbiage you guys use and how you guys come up with your information right over my head. So okay, so we're calling this a little mini panel, and I guess by the end of this, I want to answer the question: Did Trevor Bauer cheat his way to his mega deal? All right, Luis, you want to start us off with a question?
Uh,
Oh, actually,
yeah, like
sorry. Before we do that, and this is the magic of podcasting, I'll cut what I just did there. Um, can I just get a quick introduction from you guys? We'll start with Zach. Tell me a little bit about yourself and you know, your background and everything.
So, my name is Zach Hayes. I'm a writer, podcaster, contributor, whatever you want to call it, at Pitcher List. I am from Chicago, Illinois, currently located in Chicago, Illinois, and wrapping up my master's degree in American Studies and working part time freelance otherwise. And thanks for having me on. Really looking forward to it.
Sweet.
nice.
Ben?
Hey, I'm Ben Clemens. I am a writer for FanGraphs. I've been working there for about 2 years now, and I live in San Francisco.
Nice.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Welcome
Nice.
aboard. Luis, you have a question?
You want me to? Did I have a
Yes.
question, or did you
Start
have
us off,
something
man.
else?
Start us off. Take it away.
Guys, like Manny mentioned, so we came across this YouTube video, and a bunch of things are running through my mind. The overall thought that I took away from this Trevor Bauer story is that I just feel like there's a collective effort to keep this not like such a big story. And the reason I say that is because after a guy signs a contract like that, actually, let me take a step back. Like, I feel like I'm not heavy into Twitter like maybe you guys are because of your professions. You have to stay on top of things. I love watching baseball. I try to keep track of the Red Sox, the Yankees, the AL East, and then above that, superstars in the league and stuff. I remember when Trevor Bauer called out the Astros and Garrett Cole specifically for increasing their spin rate. And I remember looking at the Astros and they were just dominating. We didn't know they were cheating at the time and everything. But I don't remember I don't recall seeing this story about Trevor Bauer saying, he's been experimenting with Coca-Cola and pine tar and stuff, and that he actually proved when he increased his spin rate in a game. So we're going to get to all of this stuff, but just so you know, like my thought is that no matter how much we push this, there's just a collective effort to keep this as minimal as possible, especially since Trevor Bauer signs his big contract. And I feel like that's why maybe the video resurfaced into my light in YouTube, but I really haven't heard much about it since. So that wasn't really a question. That was just really my, takeaway from the video.
I think that's a great way to put it. And honestly, like when Bauer called out the Astros, that was the first time that anyone had really talked about like how pervasive, pine tar sunscreen with rosin works. I mean, people use all kinds of just random stuff, right? Yeah. We could be here for an hour and I couldn't list all the stuff the pitchers have tried. But I think that it's been kind of an unspoken secret for a really long time that most pitchers in baseball are willing to use something. I mean, if you walk through a locker room, you'll see not just the pitchers, but the catchers and the infielders who throw the ball around the horn after a strikeout, covering the corners of their gloves in pine tar, getting a little bit at the base of their glove. So when they flip it back to the pitcher, he can have like a little bit more grip on it. Yeah. And that's just like, I can remember the flare-ups. Like you said, I remember the Bauer accusations on Garrett Cole. It might be true. I don't know. I remember Michael Pineda getting caught with some pine tar. These things happen intermittently. But the real truth is they're catching guys when they're just really blatantly violating these rules. Pineda was like sweating pine tar. It was disgusting.
I remember. So I want to say, like, you're right. I for as long as I can remember, pitchers have used something. From what I thought and what me and Manny have always discussed on this podcast is you let them use legalized pine tar because the hitters are okay with them having a better grip. It's safer, whatever. This is more like not only are they getting a better grip, but they're increasing their RPMs, and it's increasing their performance. So do you think there's hitters in in Major League Baseball that are still saying, yeah, let them use whatever they got to use, even if it increases their RPMs? I feel like I really haven't heard that.
I think that's kind of where we start to get into the specific issue with Bauer too, is that all of these things are not necessarily created equal, and that there's a difference between if you're taking a protein shake or you're taking anabolic steroids, you're both using substances to like you make yourself stronger and aid your workouts and all that stuff, but there's massive difference between the two, and I personally don't know like what Bauer was using or what that substance might have been. We do know that Bauer has spent a lot of time on this in the past, and I can't help but think that whatever Bauer is cooking up in the Driveline lab is probably a little bit different than a guy just spraying sunscreen on his arm and dousing it in rosin. It's kind of so when you really start to get into the idea of sort of engineering advantages like that are outside the rules, then the kind of playfully will look the other way because it's really kind of questionable whether it actually does anything. That's when that goes out the window and you start to have a real ethical issue. And I think that also speaks to why there's this effort to kind of keep this under, maybe not keep it under wraps, but why no one is really sure how to talk about it or what to do about it, because it's kind of hard to unilaterally now. So you can't really pick and choose by the rules. You can't say, okay, Bauer, what you're doing is bad, but what the other 80% of the league is doing is fine. So where do you draw those lines is kind of what's at stake here.
Yeah, and it's worth noting as well that pine tar does increase like the RPMs you get on the ball a little bit, not as much as something that you would manufacture in a lab, but anything that makes your finger stick to the ball more is going to make the ball spin more for the same throwing motion. So actually, Saris did a cool thing where he just went to a pitching lab, had them get just some random pitcher who throws like in the 70s or 80s, like a college pitcher, a high school pitcher. And he said, throw it with nothing on your hands, then throw it with pine tar, then throw it with a sticky substance, like this special grip substance. And the pine tar increased his spin by like 100 RPM. The stickier stuff did it by like 250. So the stickier your hands get, it kind of makes sense. Like the more the ball sticks to your hands as you're letting it go, the more you can like really spin it. If you ever tried to throw something that's wet, and it just kind of flies like crazy, just the grippier you get your hands, the better. And so
cold weather, all that.
Exactly.
Stuff.
Like
cold weather's a big one.
The arms race is like you said, like it starts to make it feel a lot worse. But the general act of making your hand stickier to make the ball spin more is I don't think anyone would want to get rid of that totally. It's just a question of, like you said, if they're cooking it up in a lab, it starts to feel a lot worse.
I gotta tell you, I'm as a baseball fan, I'm already I'm up here thinking about this stuff, thinking about somebody being in a lab trying to come up with like maybe like a skin tight glove of some sort. I don't know. Manny, go.
It's funny because I have almost the opposite reaction. Like I don't like it because it's you're unfair. You have an unfair advantage over everyone else. But I like it because I think it makes the game more entertaining. I love these pitching ninja gifs and pitcher lists gifs, and because I've never seen balls move the way they move now, aside from maybe Greg Maddox's changeup 25 years ago. But anyway, so let's kind of dial this back a little bit, and let's start with Ben, your first piece. Trevor may have conducted an experiment. Your first piece on this issue. I don't know if you wrote something before that, but that's the one where we have clear evidence that for one inning in a game in 2018, Trevor Bauer must have done something because his RPMs are through the roof, and then it went back to normal for the rest of the game. What inspired this for you? Like, did you notice it right away? Was it something someone said, you looked up and you found, or tell me how this kind of started for you?
Yeah. So that particular incident, he did this for, I think, one inning in 2018. Mm-hmm. I actually didn't write. I read about Travis Sawchik, asked him about it. And he said, oh yeah, like, you might see something out here.
No comment or something. I remember.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he did it for one inning and it disappeared after that. And he had told someone before the game that he was going like, hey, watch my spin rates in the first inning or something like that. And so that kind of put me on notice that like, hey, like Bauer does weird stuff sometimes. So it might be worth like digging through just like his game logs to see if anything looks weird. And I wasn't particularly looking for like, did he conduct another spin rate experiment? I was looking for just any experiment because write about baseball 5 times a week. You love to have someone doing something weird so you can write about it.
Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then I noticed that instead of small experiments, he just did it for the entire month of September in 2019.
Right. And I wonder if and we'll come back to 2018, but I wonder if in 2019 he struggled a lot that season. I wonder if it was him throwing his arms up and just saying, screw it. I'm just gonna do this, because prior to that, he kept throwing the word moral, being a moral person. And so I want to go back to 2018 real quick. Do you guys think that perhaps he did that purposefully to kind of test the system, see who was going to notice, who wasn't going to notice, or was it just, Bauer being Bauer, a lightning rod?
I don't want to project too much. Knowing what we know about Bauer and his personal conduct and how he, generally moves on the internet, and how all that goes, he's somebody that likes pushing buttons for the sake of pushing buttons. I think that's a fair statement to make. So, whether it was spite at his calling out of the Astros going unlistened to, whether it was the success of Cole, there's a lot of kind of rumors, hearsay about their potentially contentious relationship going back to UCLA. So it's really hard to judge, but they say that Barry Bonds started juicing around the same time that Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were hopping up the home run chart. So if there were a similar kind of dynamic there, I don't think we'll ever be able to say for sure, but it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world to me if that gets what you're getting at a little.
Yeah. Okay. And I would just add that Bauer had kind of always been notably not using pine tar and kind of talking about how it was bad, or not pine tar, still just sticky substances in general. And that was kind of surprising. And then when you add in the fact that, like you said, he had kind of a down 2019, he got traded to the Reds and then they were out of it. And there was it wasn't his walk year. There was just a lot of goof around in September. Yeah. There was this feeling of well, he should try something, see if he can get back his form.
I remember there was that one game where he had a cut on his finger or something, and the other team wouldn't let him cover it up with a liquid Band-Aid.
That was 2017, I think.
The drone, after the drone game when he cut his hand open on the drone and he tried to make his next start, but he kept bleeding all over the place.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's why. And I think Luis, I think maybe this is what you're gonna say. Why do you? If that's why maybe he started all of this, because he's I can't use a liquid bandage for my gaping hole in my hand, but the Astros are doing whatever he's accusing them of doing. Was that what you were going to say, Luis?
Yeah.
My bad.
And I think, to be honest, the reason they didn't want him using a liquid bandage was because it's sticky.
Yeah. Give an advantage. Yeah. So
you can't just say I'm putting it on.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at I'm thinking of just Trevor Bauer in a clubhouse. He's probably busting balls. He's left and right telling guys oh, but you don't think I know you use this kind of stuff? Do you think he somehow forced his way into a trade, and then as soon as he realized, well, I could be hurting my market value here, let me step into the dark side, let me fire up some of this pine tar here and cash in? Do you think there was a chance he was traded because not only was he underperforming, but maybe he made some of his teammates feel uncomfortable, for guys that already use things or try to enhance their game?
I would just say that if Trevor Bauer made his teammates feel uncomfortable, I'm pretty sure that it wasn't because of what sticky substances they were or weren't using. He's pretty good at making you feel uncomfortable for other reasons. One of the things that he's best at is having half his teammates love him and half of them hate him. And it wouldn't shock me if he got traded because the Indians didn't love him in the clubhouse, but I don't necessarily notice this. But as to your second point, that he realized it was suppressing how much money he was going to make. Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely, I think it was crazy that he didn't use it before when everyone else is. And I don't know, like you said, man, he keeps throwing around moral, but
right.
I don't know, man. It doesn't really seem like morals to me.
Right. And I think that the question of morality and everything he said before gets thrown out the window. And I think that's kind of what the driving force of this conversation is that it's more about the Trevor Bauer, the person, I guess, because he was throwing around the word moral. He was in that piece he wrote for the Players Tribune. I don't know if you guys read that, but he was talking about basically like the sanctity of the game and how if he was an immoral person, he would have been cheating and he would have been like a great pitcher and these guys and throwing Garrett Cole into the bus and this and that. But now I think it's pretty clear, and I think we can start moving on to late 2019. And Zach Hayes, you outlined what he did in 2020 in your piece for Pitcher List, which is called, I want to say it so people can check it out. Trevor Bauer gets some extra help over on Pitcher List. It makes me question him as a person. I don't want to judge anyone as a person, but I think it's pretty clear that he's doing something that's considered cheating. And again, most pitchers are probably doing the same thing, but coming from him specifically, who's calling people, it's almost like Rafael Palmeiro wagging his finger in Congress. You know what I mean? What do you have to say about that, Zach?
So no, it's because he's a hypocrite. That's why we're having this conversation. Gaylord Perry cheated his way to the Hall of Fame. We talk about it, but we laugh about it. If Trevor Bauer hadn't spent the last 4 or 5 years, at least in public view, being repeatedly just kind of a terrible person, when you start bringing out the hypocrisy like that, then yeah, we're gonna talk about it. And as far as the trade to Cincinnati goes and forcing a trade maybe or something like that, I think if you go and look at the video of him throwing the ball over the center field wall and you look at the look on Terry Francona's face as he takes the ball and turns around and you can see him ask like what the hell is going on. I think that kind of tells you all you need to know about where the Cleveland organization might have been with him at that point. It's just you can't really separate it like that. It's it's the whole package with him, and you keep pushing buttons like that, you're not going to be able to get away with it in the same way that Garrett Cole might be able to.
Yeah, I would just say I just totally agree. It's not an issue of. I just don't think it's an issue of morality. But once you call it morality and then you do it, well, what does that say about you? It's not morality. Almost everyone in baseball does it. But when you say these guys are cheating and I don't believe in this, then you kind of forfeit your ability to do it and not have people look askance at it. I think that's why it's Bauer specifically that we're having this discussion about, rather than are baseball players using too many foreign substances. I don't care, but Bauer saying everyone shouldn't and then doing it feels really bad.
Yeah, it reminds me of Justin Verlander when he got upset about steroid use, and then he's on the Astros, doesn't say anything, doesn't even comment on it. Sorry, Manny.
I was gonna say it reminds me of, we have a thing here where we mention A-Rod in every episode. So
I was actually just about to mention him, and I didn't just to avoid this. But yeah, I stopped holding baseball players to higher standard when A-Rod got caught the first time. So.
Well, don't have heroes,
No, exactly.
No, honestly, not in baseball.
I was gonna say with A-Rod coming out and admitting to using steroids, it's not apples to apples, but it's more like as if A-Rod had been walking around baseball during the early 2000s, shaming Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco for using steroids and then getting popped twice for doing the same exact thing. And the thing with Bauer is that it seems like not only is he cheating now or doing what he thought was immoral now, but he has mastered it like no one else has. Because his spin rate is insane. It's through the roof. And I just let's talk about spin rate a little bit, because I want to understand why this is such a, if that's the goal that he's trying to achieve, is to increase his spin rate, because I think his velocity has dropped a little bit, but his spin rate has increased. Why does that make him a more effective pitcher, or why is that considered cheating?
So I'll leave aside the why is that considered cheating, but I can just quickly go through why he wants more spin rate on his fastball and how that's working for him. Okay. So Bauer's best pitch, you could argue about some of his secondaries, but his best pitch is probably just his regular four-seam fastball. And that's, the old bread and butter, take a baseball, grip it down the seams and rip it. And the way that pitch does well is that hitters can hit velocity, right? They're all really good. But what they can't do is track the movement of the ball. because it's just too hard. Your eyes don't have time to react. And our brains can tell you what flight a ball takes in air. Like you watch a football get thrown, you know where it's going to go to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can go catch it. Somebody throws you a 30-yard pass in football, you can go catch it. It's no problem. Your brain's really smart at that. But if you spin the ball, like backspin the ball, which is what Bauer's doing, that's the spin we're talking about, the ball doesn't fly true. It's like if you've hit a tennis shot with top spin or like just thrown a baseball and seen it kind of tail one way or another. What he's doing is the more spin he can get on the ball, the more he can make it fly different than the path that your eyes think it'll follow. And so the more he can make it diverge from that path, the less likely hitters are to be able to hit it, because they start swinging, they have to predict where it's going to be. Like baseball is incredibly hard. And if he can get like an extra inch of rise because the ball curves from a normal path because it has so much spin on it, well, the difference between hitting the sweet spot of your bat and hitting an inch, I mean, a quarter inch is enough, let alone an inch, is, a pop-up or a whiff against a home run. And so it seems silly to RPM is whatever, something you learned in like high school science. It's not, it's kind of abstract and it's hard to think about. But what it really means is he's just a lot better at keeping the ball from moving the way hitters think it should. And the more spin, the less it moves like you think it should. And that's the $300 million, not $300 million. I guess he signed a $100 million deal, but there's a lot of money in making hitters not realize where the ball is.
Crazy.
There you go. Rise and fastball, more spin, more rise. More spin and efficiency. Mm-hmm.
But did the data always correlate? I know you guys probably looked at multiple pitchers. Did the data always correlate to more spin rate, more success, or was it just more spin rate? What was the takeaway for the most part? I mean, I know Bauer's had success, Garrett Cole's had success, Clayton Kershaw still. He's still an elite pitcher. I don't know if you guys agree, but
definitely.
But did the data always correlate to that, or did you guys see something different?
It's less of a correlation in terms of like cause and effect, because it really just depends on how you use it. It works differently for different pitchers and different pitchers. One guy looking to add 100 RPM to his fastball is going to do different things depending on a ton of other different variables, like how efficiently he spins the ball is one thing. So like if you have a ball that has a really high spin rate, but it doesn't spin efficiently, which means it's not getting the kind of spin that leads to movement, it's not going to do anything for you.
Like if you throw it like a football,
yes,
footballs spin, but they don't break. So the more you throw it like a football, the less how much spin you had matters.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. You have a lot more experience explaining this stuff than I do. So part of the job description, but so so there's no, you can't really say that there's a correlation to success though, because, a pitch moves a little bit differently. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And there's still just so many other variables involved. If a curveball has an extra 100 RPMs and it moves another 2 inches and it got better, are you going to say that that's because it started moving more, or maybe the pitcher started putting it in better spots? Maybe he started throwing it in different counts, and this is all like, total conjecture. But it's one of many, many variables that you can look at to see like if there are potentially changes.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning that in Bauer's case, it looked like if you looked at Trevor Bauer, you'd say, oh, this guy would benefit from like more spin on his fastball. He is one of the best in baseball at getting perfectly pure backspin. So like that, like a tire going down a road, like just all the spin goes straight forward as opposed to a football. He and Garrett Cole are the two best in baseball at it, honestly. Like there's just no one better than those two. And when you throw the ball like that, you want as much spin as possible. And so if you asked me before 2019, who are the two pitchers who would benefit most from more spin, I would have said Cole and Bauer. And so it's not surprising that it's worked well for him, because his game just suits more spin, but it's not something that would work like cookie cutter for everyone. Exactly like Zach said. It just depends what you're already doing with the fastball.
Yeah, like Kyle Hendricks is a guy who's dotting the corner with sinkers and getting folks to whiff at his changeup. Putting a little extra spin on the fastball isn't
Yeah,
that's not
like
his game.
85 is still 85.
Exactly. It's picking your spots. It's a difference maker in some spots and maybe less so in others for other folks.
Did you guys I'm supposed to say that I'm not still a Yankees fan. So as a former Yankees fan, Garrett Cole was still a good pitcher last year, still elite level. Did you see a dip in RPMs after getting that mega deal? Did he just stop doing it, or does it still look about the same to you guys based on the data? I wouldn't even know how to look for this stuff.
He's lying. He knows exactly how to look
race
for
to
this stuff.
I have no
right
idea.
now.
I'm just Googling in the background here.
I don't know how to look up this stuff. Like it comes across.
His spin on his four-seam fastball dropped about 25 RPM, which is pretty negligible in the grand scheme of things. And his fastball velocity decreased by about half a mile an hour too. So that's pretty much linear, you know.
Yeah.
As
so
you
one thing that you would notice, like just naturally, is the harder you throw the ball, the more spin it's going to have. Like that's just like you can do other things that impart spin, but if you throw it harder, it'll spin more or it'll spin faster because I don't know. That's just how
everything is moving faster, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Your hand's moving faster, so the ball spins faster. To me, the issue with Cole was just terrible home run luck.
Yeah.
I mean, the Yankee Stadium is always going to subject you to the vagaries of home run luck. You know, 3 home runs in a 13 start season and you look like trash all of a sudden.
And you could tell it was like 2 or 3 starts towards the beginning of the year. And I thought you could tell, I was talking with some folks, he did seem like a tiny little bit mechanically off for a start or 2 at the beginning there, which.
Oh, and that could definitely be the money, right? Like if I got a contract that big, I would celebrate.
I'd be hungover.
Little hungover all of 250 days later. But then he was, by the end of the season, though, I didn't think there was really any reason for concern at all.
Yeah. And he kind of reminded me of Verlander, the MVP, the Cy Young season, where he was super home run prone, but elite, otherwise super elite. It was almost like I was talking to Luis about this when it was going on. It was almost like he didn't care because he was giving up solo home runs that weren't, really hurting him at all. But Justin Verlander, let's talk about the Astros real quick because that's where this all stems from. That's where Bauer started making moral statements and throwing people into the bus and all this stuff. Did he have a point? Were they using, or are they using sticky substances? Is there any indication?
Probably. I would argue that a lot of the things that Bauer implied about pitchers who get traded to the Astros are not conclusively provable. Like he said that, you go there and you magically get a huge bump in spin rate. I don't know. Like the data is not conclusive. Like some Astros pitchers have thrown it more, some have thrown it less. The Astros definitely target guys who throw these spinning 4-seam fastballs. Like if you close your eyes, like all the Astros fastballs look the same. Their arm angles are pretty over the top. They're thrown kind of the same way. They don't have these like sinker heavy guys. So there's some like they select these guys and they're good at training them. And probably they're all using sticky substances. But I think Bauer's whole moral crusade thing was, as Zach mentioned, because he has a beef with Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
And Saris has talked about how if you want to just open the door to sticky substances, period, his estimation is that 95% of pitchers are using some kind of something. And maybe for all we know, the Astros might be at that kind of same level with Bauer, where knowing what their priorities were as an organization as far as finding edges and little advantages, it wouldn't surprise me necessarily either if they were a little ahead of the curve as far as what specific kinds of substances were optimized there. But
totally,
would any of this have been a huge deal if Bauer had not opened his mouth about it to begin with? No, I don't think we'd be having this conversation at all, honestly.
Someone go ahead, Luis, my bad.
I was going to say, I almost find it hard to believe that Bauer's the only one that's taking this to the lab. Like these are $1 billion organizations.
Oh yeah, maybe he's better at it, but no, it's not like everyone else is like, I don't know, man.
Going back to the trade comment real quick, I don't. This is neither here nor there. Make of it what you will. I can't believe that it's a coincidence that 2 months after being traded to the Reds, that they brought in his buddy Kyle Bodie to run their entire pitching operation. This is the man who runs Driveline Baseball and is a partner in crime, I guess you could say, with Bauer and everything they've done over the past 6-7 years. If you read the MVP Machine by Ben Lindbergh and Travis Sawchik, fantastic book. Some other implications as far as how Bauer is treated within that book, but that's again neither neither here nor there. But this is it's way more widespread than is ever really going to be publicly known. But it's again, that's why we're here. It's because the obnoxious guys with the biggest mouths are the ones who make it an issue.
Right. All right. So the biggest question here, I guess, is should baseball just legalize this? Just allow pitchers to use sticky substances, and maybe regulate it. Like, you can use a sticky substance, but it can only be pine tar, or it can only be, Coke and I don't know, whatever else Bauer mixed up in his lab. What do you guys think?
I mean, I can start. Yeah, I think so. I think I don't understand why they don't. It's still going to be like a slippery slope situation where it's a hard thing to enforce, and maybe some guy will still try to get an edge over the regulated substance. But if you both tell pitchers you can use this thing that's about as good as what you're using, probably as good for most of them, and also if we catch you using something else, there are going to be harsh penalties, and so it's going to be a harsh penalty for a marginal gain. Like, pitchers are smart. Baseball players are smart. They're not going to be like, oh, well, I might be able to get an extra 5 RPM, but if I get caught, I'm getting suspended for 30 games. They're not going to do it. And so I think regulating it, and hey, if some pitchers think, oh, I don't need to use this, my grip actually just works better as is, I'm not throwing a 4-seam fastball, great, don't use it. Like, that's fine. There's plenty of things in baseball that are available to players that they don't use. Not everyone uses the same glove. Not everyone uses the same bat. I think the sooner that we regulate it and say, look, here's what we allow. If you go over this line, we're going to slam you. Not the current way that they do, where it's very selective. Like, just be systematic and say, if you cheat, we're going to catch you and we're going to punish you. Like, our umpires will come out and search you before the game, but we're not trying to make you throw without pine tar. Here's some. Right. That just seems like an easy solution to me. I don't know why they haven't done it.
Right. How about you, Zach? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I could not agree more, and that's said better than I ever could. And there's a lot of benefit to bringing it over the table too. I mean, part of the issue here is that MLB is perpetually unprepared and always caught off guard to deal with the dirty little secrets of the game, of which there are many. So I think the quicker we're able to say, like, okay, we all do this, let's regulate it, let's have a conversation about it. So then if there ever is a question where someone says, hey, I think that guy's going a little bit out of bounds and doing a little bit extra here, then there's a mechanism to do that and to check that and say, okay, this is either fair and legal or it's not. So yeah, I really don't know why why that hasn't been. We haven't even heard anything about that, honestly.
Yeah, I think like a rosin bag. Just you could have a can of it just right behind the mound or something. You know what I mean?
I totally agree.
It should be really simple. But
yeah,
a lot of things.
I gotta be honest. Like, I've always been on board with legalizing pine tar and letting the pitchers use it, but I'm just thinking about it. Like, if the line gets pushed further to, yeah, you can use something, then what's next? It just feels like professional. It doesn't matter. It's not just a baseball thing. It's in every sport. But they're always pushing the boundaries to try to play within the rules, but they're actually bending the rules. So just feel like if they ever did put something on paper saying this is what you're allowed to use, or maybe here's a list of things you're allowed to use, like kind of like the whole steroid thing, like these are the banned substances and stuff like that. I feel like it's going to bring something else. Like, they're going to start cutting the ball to make it do something weird. And that's going to be like the next.
I do think you can't do it if you're not going to be strong on enforcement. If you're going to say you need to commit to so in Korea, they actually go out and check the players actually up and down before the game. And nobody uses pine tar there because they'll just throw you out of the game. They just won't let you in. Like, when you take the mound, the umpire walks out and he says, hey, let me see the sleeves of your shirt. Let me see the back of your hat. Let me see the underside of your jersey. And he just goes through and checks. And so if you're not going to do something like that, then yeah, if you start making more and more stuff legal, people will keep pushing the envelope more and more. I totally agree with you. Yeah, if you're not going to enforce it, this is a bad plan. They have to be willing to, they have to be credible, right? That, hey, if you go past this line that we set and we're being generous, we're going to punish you.
It's almost like that test rule that they tried a couple seasons ago where they were like, yeah, let's have a pitching clock. Yeah. Players were just like, all right.
Or no, you can't step out of the box.
Like 1 foot out of the box.
Yeah, yeah. Like, baseball has an enforcement problem because they come up with all these like silly kind of like half thought out rules and they don't enforce them.
Tobacco is illegal in clubhouses still, or in the dugouts, I'm pretty sure. Like, and Jose Abreu's lips get bigger every time
DJ LeMahieu
steps up to the plate. And it's as soon as you bring it over the table and you're absolutely right. You do have to regulate it harshly and actually enforce stuff. At the same time, like there's always going to be a little give and take though. Like players are always going to respond to different kinds of rules and regulations and find ways to get around it. I mean, you think of it, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was so dominant at UCLA that they banned the slam dunk for a couple of years. Yeah. Like
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Back in, like 1960
or tiger proofing golf courses.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. But there's always adjustments being made. You couldn't dribble at first in basketball, or you couldn't, I'm sure there's baseball analogs there. And so I definitely agree with you in that it needs to be harshly regulated, but I just don't think I would worry so much about like where it might go after it, as long as it's not like doing something that's like causing a ruckus and harming people like what you see with Bauer. I'm kind of okay with seeing where the game takes us there.
I think it's also good to level playing fields in general. Mm-hmm. And even if this would lead to like some increased rule breaking, I think it would level the playing field decently. Because if you talk to the vast majority of pitchers and you said, look, you don't have to do this nonsense. Like, we're going to give you basically the stuff that you used before. But instead of having to get it off your shortstop's glove when he throws the ball around the horn, you can just take this little can. They would be like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to start with Kershaw because last postseason, like every time I see it, I love Kershaw, by the way, and a lot of pitchers that do this, but it drives me nuts because it's so clear and nobody gives a shit. Like, have you seen Kershaw's hat before?
Hey,
that's not sweat.
He finally got rid of his glove.
Yeah, I saw that.
He used the same glove his entire career. That thing was disgusting. Yeah,
but
I mean that's
his hat looks like this is one of my hats for my freshman year of college, or I got called out for.
I've never used anything in baseball. I've never like spit in my hands, nothing. And I'm sitting here thinking like I'm such an idiot. I should have been doing this. Everybody's doing this, man.
But Clayton Kershaw's hat, it looks like he dips it inside of tar before a start. Like there's clearly something on that hat. Nobody says anything. Who else did I see recently? I think Craig Kimbrell, when he was at the Red Sox.
Trevor Rosenthal, I think, also had.
He had stuff on his hat too. Clearly, like there's something going on. Nobody says anything. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, fine. I'm glad because I love seeing Kershaw's amazing curveball or whatever. But I just don't understand why we play these games in baseball. Just legalize it or don't.
Much of it just follows. It's all about those weird boundaries. Like that's okay, but Michael Pineda put some like on his neck, so that was not okay. And Bradford William Davis in the New York Daily News had a really interesting story the other day about Kevin Mather, and there was a little anecdote in there about how Carlos Beltran actually thinks that incident with Pineda happened because there was an English miscommunication there, where Pineda misunderstood instructions from a coach on like what to do with the pine tar, like where to put it. So there's so many different things playing into these weird, like when we call this out, when we don't, who gets in trouble for it, who doesn't, when we decide it's okay. I think, we're all right here. It really does need to just be.
I think it says something that the two highest profile pine tar, like people getting caught that I can think of are Pineda. And it sounds like it just stemmed from miscommunication, but also like it just looked so unnatural. And I think he was just going at his neck so much. And then Brendan Donnelly. And the reason that Brendan Donnelly got caught for pine tar is because he was a scab in the 1994 strike. Right. And so every player in the union hated him. And so they just waited until like there was a situation where they could bring it up, and just brought it up. Like, but it wasn't because he was using it more than other people. It's just because, and there's not a lot of incentive to just call Clayton Kershaw out, because the Dodgers will just call your pitcher out. Like,
Right.
They're doing it too. So it tends to be like to make a point, or like because you don't like the guy for other reasons. And I bet you that there are a lot of other batters and managers looking for whatever Bauer's using. If he had Pineda neck or Kershaw hat, he would get caught because people would love to stick to Trevor Bauer, and I understand the impulse.
That just made me wonder but he hasn't faced the Astros since 2019 because they were facing the division opponents last year.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you if you've seen a spin rate reduction when he faces the Astros, but he hasn't faced them yet since then, so that probably hasn't happened. Are there any other pitchers of note that you've seen huge spikes from, where it's clear that they're doing something fishy?
So I haven't found any, but the tricky thing with this is if you already use something, then we'd never find it.
Right.
We can't say like, oh, at the weight that you are with the arm length that you have, you shouldn't be able to spin it that much. I mean, I have no idea. Like pitching is complicated. Pedro Martinez was tiny and like threw the ball really hard, and some people are big and throw slow. I just can't. You can't pinpoint it unless they change, and I haven't been able to find anyone changing except Bauer.
Wow.
There's one guy off the top of my head, and I just went and got the numbers, and that's Brandon Woodruff. Saw about a 200 RPM spike on his fastball this year. Not much of a velocity change, so yeah.
So there's one.
What it means. So there's one, but
Go
just
ahead,
keep in mind, it's he was a good pitcher. It's hard to say, like, I don't know if I haven't done an analysis on what the effect might have been or if there was any effect, but it's something we're probably going to see guys looking out for more, at least something that's going to be more publicized. I'm certain of.
Yeah. So Ben, just like you said, like you see a pitch, you see a guy and you think to yourself, like, there's no reason why this guy wouldn't be able to spin the ball this hard. So basically you're saying the only way that you catch this is when they jump, when they get like that burst of 200 to 300 range.
Yeah. Or if you see it on the ball. Like you can catch it with the camera, but if you're trying to do it with the data, you need the change because we just don't know enough about pitchers' innate abilities. All we can say is what they've done before.
So is it safe to say that on Trevor Bauer's best day, he's not touching these RPMs? Otherwise, he probably would have already done this, or is there temperature plays into this at some point?
And I want to add to that. Is there any other way that he could have increased his RPMs by as much as he did?
So I don't want to say it's impossible because I don't know, baseball makes great leaps and people discover new ways of doing things. Nothing that I've been able to either discover or learn from people or any of that suggests this amount of increase. Spin rate appears to be one of those things that pitchers just have, and it's pretty stable pitcher to pitcher once you index for their velocity. Like as guys slow down, they spin it a little less. But if you look at the ratio between those, it's actually pretty stable. Temperature can play a part, and I don't want to say that he could never like just get into one just right. And like on the perfect day when he was sweating at the exact optimal amount and the sun was at the exact right angle and the humidity was this, I don't know. I mean, that could happen, but yeah, he's not sitting like this without using something to increase his grip. We have a giant database of what he did with an unenhanced grip. And so we kind of know his highs and lows and norms. And this is just, it's not similar.
So does he lead everyone in RPMs?
There's a few guys who might be like at the top spot for individual pitchers, but I'm fairly certain he's in the top 2 or 3 for fastballs, curveballs, and sliders, which is pretty. I don't know the leaderboards off the top of my head.
I think in your piece
he wasn't there before.
Yeah, I think Zach. I think in your piece you had Minor was the leader, but then when Bauer started, he blew him away by like 200 RPMs or something.
Yeah, so Bauer led baseball this past year, and actually his teammate Lucas Sims was second.
Wow.
Well,
so they were throwing pretty hard.
How about Sonny Gray? Like Sonny Gray be turned into an elite. Like I mean, he's a great pitcher to start. Couldn't handle New York apparently, it seemed like, but in Cincinnati he turned into an elite pitcher. Yeah.
So I don't think Gray really fits into this category. Ironically, the thing that he just got better at was his slider. You know how he like just complained for years on end about how the Yankees made him throw the slider when he didn't want to. Then he went to the Reds and they were like, you should throw your slider more. And I don't know, like talking to him differently, like unlocked it. But if you look at his spin over years, it's gotten a little higher by like less than 100 RPM peak to trough. And he's been throwing harder. And that nothing seems to have been a sea change there so much as just like he got better at using the pitches he had.
Yeah, there are so many individual little tiny components that go into the data characteristics of any individual pitch. Even like the RPM numbers that we're giving you are all averages over the course of thousands and thousands of pitches. Like you can have deviations of like, one pitch could be, 200, 100, very easily be 100, RPM different than the very next one. These are averaged over a long period of time. And I think, like Ben said, I don't want to also count anything out when it comes to what we're learning about what you can do with the ball. I think there's been like a little bit of research that suggests that maybe spin has something to do with like your grip strength and something in your wrists. But that's like tenuous at best as far as we know. And given what Bauer himself has said, there's really no other way that's happening. But Sonny Gray is a good way to also bring up where it's not necessarily the right thing for everybody. That's not really the type of pitcher that Sonny Gray is. We're boosting his RPM, by doing whatever might boost his RPM. But if that's not going to play into his, sinker curveball heavy approach, like if that's not going to benefit that, then kind of what's the point?
So I guess what I'm concluding from this is that there's no way he could have increased his RPMs so much without using some sort of a grip aiding substance. And it sounds like he's has increased it the most of anyone else. And would you say that before that Garrett Cole fit the same kind of description? Or was there another pitcher?
It's harder to say with Cole because we weren't
looking.
We weren't really looking and we also don't have data before 2015 for any of this stuff because that's when they started measuring spin with radar.
Right.
And so they just weren't recording it before. The guys that I think of for like this purist fastball, like perfect backspin and like you get the most use out of your spin are Cole and Verlander and Bauer. And so I think a lot of why Bauer pointed the finger at the Astros in the first place is because they had the two guys who are the best at it.
Right.
Like if you think like, who are these guys who just throw these fastballs that explode and the batters are just flailing? It's Cole and Verlander. And so you can imagine if you're a rival pitcher just being super annoyed. These Astros, like everyone throws the same fastball and it's unhittable. So those are the guys I think of, and we can't know if they're doing it. They probably are. They're not dummies, but I don't think we have any evidence that they necessarily are.
Yeah, I think it might be systemic with the Astro system. Whatever they're doing, it starts really early because their pitchers all throughout their minors are sick.
Yeah, they also throw a really similar set of pitches, right? Like they don't have the kind of like diversity of approaches and arm angles and stuff that a lot of other teams do. They're all this like way over the top, like fastball, dropping curveball, like Lance McCullers, basically.
Yeah, it's like they found a hack, like, and there's no, I don't know. You see, Luis, you're a gamer here. What do you call it when there's something in a what? Not a cheat code, and the company fixes it like a glitch in the system. Yeah, there's no patch to this because it's real life or whatever. You know what I mean?
I think systemic is actually a good word for the Astros in particular there, because that's their whole kind of brand of getting ahead of the curve was by systematizing everything from their bottommost levels of the minor leagues all the way up through the majors. Everything was coordinated. You know, the coaches are on the same page. The scouts are on the same page as far as what players they're targeting and what they're teaching them once they get here. And I think so that's partly why that perception happens, and probably why it's also easier to call them out on it, because it then doesn't become like, oh, this guy is doing this or this guy is doing that. It becomes this organization has this philosophy and they're doing this thing. And, you know,
it feels a lot better to call out like a team, like kind of this evil group of people all working together with a bunch of nerdy eggheads in the back office you can't see. than to call out like, an individual fellow player. That feels crappy. Like, I don't know, that guy's working hard too. You're sure he's in the gym a lot, but if you can call out like the idiots in the front office, it feels a lot better.
I don't know what you guys' take on steroids are, like if you guys want certain guys in the Hall of Fame or not or anything, but when you look at this situation, does it equate to steroids? Because I feel like it's the same thing. Just because you took steroids back in the 80s and 90s doesn't mean you were putting up Hall of Fame numbers or anything. People used it differently. It benefited some, it didn't. Everybody was, according to certain sources, it was 80% of the league doing it or whatever. Are we at that point where you would think it's on that same level, just like Bauer said, or do you think it's not as big of an enhancement?
I honestly think that it's very hard for us to know how much steroids increased offense, just because we don't know what else changed around then, and it definitely increased offense. Like, I'm not going to say it had no effect, but it seems like it hurt some guys and helped others. And pitchers were using them. I do think that it is roughly equally prevalent, and that pretty much all the pitchers are doing it at this point. Like Zach said, I think estimated 95% of pitchers use something. And as to the Hall of Fame, like, I'm kind of a let them in guy. Like, if you're famous, then I think you should probably be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Because when I grew up, like, I knew who Roger Clemens was. I knew who Barry Bonds was. I knew who Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were. They're the Hall of Fame baseball players. They're the most famous baseball players for my entire childhood. So
right.
To me, it's the same with this. Put them in.
Same here. And those guys, and this was at a time where there wasn't social media, and where I couldn't watch a Roger Clemens, start if now I could watch anybody if I wanted to. I could get an MLB TV subscription or watch MLB Network or something, and I can catch a Kershaw start or whatever. When we were kids, I had to wait for when he was with the Blue Jays to come play the Yankees. Fortunately, they're in the same division or whatever. With Barry Bonds, I never saw him until interleague play. So yeah, I agree with you. And the thing too, similar to this, I think there's similar problems, paradoxes, maybe, I don't know what you would call it, but is that because there's no way of telling who's doing it and who isn't, almost everybody, you have to assume that everybody's guilty of doing it.
I mean, honestly, like, all those dudes in the 70s used speed.
Right. Yeah.
Rock Reigns, yeah. Like, come on.
And they said Babe Ruth, there was a book I read about Babe Ruth that he was taking some sort of, I don't want to spit out fake information here, but some animal testosterone or something
he thought would.
Oh yeah, who the hell knows with
make him hit better?
Like goat, like sperm, or so. I don't know. I just made that up.
Yeah. But guys trying to cheat a little bit is not new.
I mean, exactly. And I don't think it's honestly on the same level as the steroid discussion. I agree with you with the Hall of Fame and like, let him in. I draw the line at like at Kurt Schilling personally, like someone like that is where I say, okay, baseball doesn't matter. Like, get the hell out of here. Generally let him in, and I don't even think this is close to the same level, because the thing with the steroid conversation and why we get so hand-wringing about Bonds and Clemens is that, and why the people who are anti letting the steroid folks in are so vehement in that position, is that you saw Barry Bonds doing things at age like 38, 39, 40 that no hitter had ever done before, much less at that age. Trevor Bauer had a fantastic season, but like, he is far from the first guy to strike out, to strike out 12 guys per 9 innings and put up a 1.9 ERA. Like,
I guess he didn't like start throwing 110.
Right. Yeah. Like it's a little bit different in that I don't think it's the kind of question that like seriously impacts the legacies of like folks who would otherwise be idols in the same way. Like, personally, I don't think any less of Garrett Cole. I never liked Trevor Bauer to begin with. Like, it's not really this isn't really, it doesn't really change the calculus for me, honestly, especially because you don't have the physiological element of like actually damaging your body with steroids, which does add a whole other element to the conversation. So overall for me, no, unless you're being a real jerk about it, like Bauer, it's really doesn't move the needle for me that much. Yeah.
I mean, like Manny, like you said earlier, like if Bauer hadn't brought this up, we wouldn't be talking about it because it would just be baseball. But because he brought it up so specifically is what makes this particular case feel so just so like
egregious,
obviously sticking out.
Right. It's like the baseball podcast version of a Seinfeld episode. It's like has nothing to do with anything. It's like really doesn't matter, but it's like why you open your mouth. So now we're gonna try to find instances of you trying to do it's like he knows what he's doing in a way, because now we're talking about him for an hour.
That's what
I'm trying to get this to light so that I feel like it's up to us, not the four of us sitting here, but it's up to fans to if we're gonna just let this go, then we should never bring this up again. We should never be outraged if 10 years from now LeBron James and Serena Williams have a baby and this kid throws like 200 miles per hour and he's spitting the hell out of the ball and it's like abnormal or something because he's using pine tar of what 20 years from now it's gonna be. Then we should just never bring this up again. But if I don't know why, there's a part of me that's just it's not sitting well when it takes it to the point I went to a lab and I infused, Bubblicious or Big League Chew into this pine tar, and now I'm doing something that's never been done before. There's something not sitting right with me about that. I don't know.
Yeah, there is something to the case of like, if you let baseball teams and baseball players go off unchecked with all their money and all their resources and all their know-how for forever, they're going to get like farther and farther from what we think of as reasonable.
Yeah.
I think we just lost. I think it's just a loss.
I think most of us too just have like a kind of inner sense of fairness to when something is crossing a line. And it's hard to put that on paper, but like we can say that Bauer is probably inching towards like I said, the reason we're having this conversation is because there's something about what he's doing that is
that's different from the rest of the league.
That is different.
And I feel like I was downplaying it a little bit, but then I'm going back to, I think, Ben, what you said, or maybe it was Zach, maybe it was both of you guys, that he has increased his RPMs more than anyone else. What would be crossing the line then at this point? Like, if we see his RPMs creeping up to like 2,700 or something, or like, what would be crossing the line at this point? Because maybe he is crossing the line. It does seem like he's doing something that nobody else is doing. He does have a bigger advantage than everyone else seems to have. I'm like changing my mind in real time here. It's kind of weird.
So am I.
We're still new to this, man. We've only got like a few years of data on it. There's still a lot of stuff we're still people like Ben in particular are still working hard on figuring out. And
I mean, I think one thing that would really stick out to me is if he has like another kind of bright line jump where it's like, oh, he just added a bunch more. Because like we said, he added more than most people do, but not by a lot. Okay. Like it was a little bit more. He's definitely like squeezing every last edge out of the sticky substance. But the fact is, like, Bauer's a really good pitcher who had an above average spin rate for not spinning the ball with pine tar or with anything sticky already. Like, this isn't like he was, some idiot who was throwing in the mid 80s and like discovered this one blend of gum and Sprite, and like now he's a Cy Young winner. Yeah. Like, for as much as he downplays how good he is as an athlete and how hard he had to work, he was like a top 5 draft pick who was a huge...
He was playing on Team USA at age 16.
He's a really good pitcher, and like his improvement was marginally more than everyone else's. And I think if it was double everyone else's, then we might say, I don't know. But the fact that Bauer spins the ball more than any other pitcher is a little bit to do with what he's using on his hands, and a lot to do with the fact that he's a really good pitcher.
Yeah.
And yeah, if he starts being like he was 5 RPM ahead of Lucas Sims last year, and then like 20 ahead of the next group and 50 ahead of the next group. And if you look at this again in a year and he's 400 ahead and nothing else has changed, then we got to say, no, like something's wrong here and this is past the line. But to me, that line is hard to find, but I don't think we're there yet.
It does have kind of the same tenor as the steroid conversation too, where there's tons of guys who are on steroids who did not hit 700 home runs. There's probably a lot of guys using very sticky substances, increasing their spin by a lot, who are not seeing because it's not really affecting their results. And there is a lot of confluence of a lot of circumstances that led us to talk about this particular aspect of Bauer's season, where it's like, if he doesn't face the the single worst slate of lineups in of any Cy Young history, are we having this conversation? If he this stuff like that. So there's not really going to be a line. It's hard to draw a line because like we're not talking about the same space here. We're not talking about like an increase in one place and an increase in the other place might be the same thing, but they're on completely different sides of the spectrum. I don't know if that makes any sense.
You kind of hit on something there that I thought was interesting. Like, would you guys care? Would we all care about this as much if it was like Adam Ottavino or something and he still sucked?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's the same thing I thought about. I don't know why Melky Cabrera is the only one that comes up to me when I think of someone that was caught with PEDs or was tested negative or positive, whatever, however you're gonna word it. And I just remember he had like that one streak with the Yankees where he was hitting 300 for like a month, and that's it. But there was somebody else who I remember got caught up in the whole PED stuff. I was like, wow, this guy was the worst steroid use I've ever seen. And man, you got anyone off the top of your head?
I remember like Marlon Bird. Marlon Bird is one that sticks out to me. And he was like,
he is the other.
He had a few okay seasons. Like, yeah, that's nice. He had like he might have been an all-star once or twice, but he was not like a stud. He was kind of like a guy who, if your team had playing left field, you'd be like, fine. Like, I hope we get someone better, but he's a place filler. Yeah, he was just like juicing like crazy. He got caught like I think twice.
Yeah, honestly,
and Marlon Bird was Doug Latta trained him, who is one of the launch angle.
Yeah, he was doing everything he possibly could to get better, like legal, illegal, and so maybe he's the guy who was really nobody before all the stuff. But
yeah,
you know what?
He's the one I think of.
Just to answer your question, no, I wouldn't care as much, like we said, because it's Trevor Bauer versus Adam Ottavino, whatever. I guess to me, I'm like in between. Honestly, I found Trevor Bauer as an amazing talent who I found annoying prior to watching this video. And I told Manny this. I was like, I actually got to give it up to the guy because he's not afraid to put himself out there. And, maybe he's trying to break this from within. Like, if you guys aren't going to do anything when I'm telling you about it, then I'm going to just keep using this to my advantage, keep cashing in on these $1 million deals. And I was giving him credit, but see, even now I'm thinking to myself, wow, this guy's even more annoying now.
Yeah, well, this is Bauer's unique genius, is that he's going to annoy you, but you're going to end up thinking about him. And I kind of hate it, honestly. It sounds like Zach's kind of in the same boat. Like, I do constantly think about this. Like, what is he doing? Does he think he's in the right? Is he actually in the right? And honestly, like, he's just a troll.
Yeah, but at then I start thinking about, he lays out all the information for you too. This isn't a big deal if he doesn't mention that he knows for a fact that he can increase his RPMs by 300 RPMs by 400, and then he goes and does it for one inning. You know what I mean? And then he kind of winks when the reporter asks him a question about whether or not he did it. It's like, this guy is just, I don't know. I have no words.
He definitely draws you into thinking about him. There's no arguing that. We're all talking about him for an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a truly double-edged sword, because there's a lot to be like, he does, in a kind of perverse way, like have a point in terms of marketing and in terms of like transparency and like, let's talk about this stuff and let's put this over the table. And like my personal view of the entire thing has been clouded. Like, honestly, I'm not going to front, like, since 2016, 2017, I've been fully aware of, like, he's been making anti-Semitic, racist tweets and comments, like, pretty consistently for 4 or 5 years. So even when, so I had a pretty negative impression of him of when this whole thing first started coming to the forefront. And it's just like, we wouldn't be talking about him if it wasn't him, because I think it's fair to say, like, okay, we don't care if we doctor the ball, but when you do it, yes, actually we do care, because you don't deserve to let this stuff slide. Like, even if you want to take he's not a popular teammate. He's done a lot of questionable things. People in baseball don't seem to like him very much.
Yeah.
He's a
We've heard a lot of comments from players. We've heard a lot of comments from executives, anonymous or otherwise. So I think it is kind of similar to shilling with the Hall of Fame, where it's, you can say, like, as the general rule, like, you know what? Yeah, this is a part of the game. We do it. And we're going to let you in, and we're not going to make a big stink about it. But if you're going to be a big jerk, and if you're going to give us a reason to be like, you know what, no. And of course, then you get into questions of where you draw that line. But I think this is a real clear case of it's okay to say we take exception with this guy. You know.
So if we, sorry, go ahead, Luis.
I was just gonna say, like, perfect way to say it, double-edged sword, because like I'm definitely gonna be watching every one of Trevor Bauer start this season.
Right.
Just so happens to play for probably the best team on paper, reigning champs. It's almost like a no-brainer. He had to go to the Dodgers or he had to go to the Yankees, and they're gonna cash in on whatever he's putting up, regardless of what kind of season. First 2 months, I'm gonna be glued watching Trevor Bauer starts. I don't know what else to say, guys.
So I was going to say, if we bring it all back to the beginning, the initial question was, did Trevor Bauer cheat his way to a 3-year, $102 million deal? I think the answer is probably yes, but the answer is also probably every pitcher is doing the same thing too. Again, a Seinfeld episode. It's really has nothing to do with anything. It's just that Bauer is such an I hope I don't get in trouble for that. But yeah. So anybody want to add anything else, Zach?
The way I would frame that is you ask, like, do I think Trevor Bauer would have won the Cy Young this year if he wasn't doing that? And I think the answer is no.
I got to be honest. This has been one of the best conversations we've had on this podcast. And the last time I was this excited about a conversation, we were interviewing like a physics professor.
Nathan, Dr.
Oh my God,
Dr. Alan Nathan. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Down at U of I, yeah.
So I was an engineer major and I love physics. Maybe that's why I love this.
This was during the juice balls things where like they essentially said, yes, the balls are juice, but like because baseball hired him, he couldn't say that they were juiced. It was
yeah, he was on the committee.
But he basically said, yes,
cutting open the balls and everything.
They're juiced, but they're not juiced. It was like, what? Zach, can you tell us just what's the name of your podcast, where we could find it, your Twitter handle?
So my podcast is called Shaggin' Flies with Ben and Zach. It's with my co-writer Ben Palmer over at Pitcher List. You can find us at Shaggin' Flies PL, and you can find me on Twitter at I can't believe I actually didn't mention this until now. My Twitter handle is Pine Tar Keyboard.
Nice.
Amazing.
So yeah, get at me there, I guess.
Ben, anything you're working on for FanGraphs, your Twitter handle?
Sure. You can read me at fangraphs.com. You can find me on Twitter at the much worse name, which is _Ben_Clemens. I'm sorry about that in advance. And I think the most interesting thing that we have coming up is in about a week or two, we're going to preview every position on every team, kind of like rank them. It's going to be a big project. It's not just me, it's the whole website, but all of us are going to put that out, and it's always pretty popular every year, pretty useful for fantasy, I think, in general too. So that's kind of our next big thing in the docket.
Last question. Can I just draft night, maybe just text you guys and just be like, hey, I'm going to go. This is my third round, whatever.
He's the commissioner, by the way,
for our league.
He's the commissioner of our league, and he knows he's not allowed to outsource.
I want to hear who you went with at third, though.
Yeah, tell us who you picked at third.
I'm leaning, since it's a third pick, I feel like I could say who I'm leaning Soto, but DeGrom I always go hitter heavy. Like last year, all these guys went super pitcher heavy, and my lineup was sick, like the sickest lineup of all time. But I have super bad luck. For example, I think it was CT. I call him CT. His name is Luis. Did you trade me Jose Fernandez in 2016?
Yeah.
Literally traded me Jose Fernandez, and the man passes away. Like that's my luck.
The man is cursed.
I am cursed, but enough about me. Oh, nice jersey. There he is back there.
Man, I wore number 16 for him in college.
Oh, no way.
All right.
No. Sorry, it's my fault, man. I'm sorry.
Oh man. Took a dark turn.
Yeah, I know. All right.
Sorry about that.
Our podcast is called Bodega Baseball. This is what happens in bodegas.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, I love it.
You walk in there, you end up walking out with like 2 connections, 3 connections.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much, and we'll talk again soon, man.
Thanks a lot, man. Stay in touch.
See you guys.
Take it easy.
Thanks, guys.